Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. I'm going to be going over some coins which has been requested by a few people within the VIP. So okay, before I start, if you can just please read the disclaimer and understand that everything I show is just for educational purposes only. It's just my own opinion and nothing that I show is financial advice. Okay, thank you again for reading, and let's continue. So first of all, one of the first coins that have been requested is Phantom. So we're gonna have a look at this original. Start off with the daily, just to see how it's looking. We can see currently it's had a nice bullish run. So let's start off with full breakdown. So first thing I want to do is I want to look at all the impulses. So we can see we have just almost pretty much close to testing the 618. If we do measure from here, can say it's tested it a few times, but I will be looking at it from here. The other thing what I want to do is I'm going to take this high to this low. Okay, so let's just move back down to 1.133. Okay, trend based fib, low to the high to the low. And again we have retested the top multiple times. Currently sitting on the 0.5. Okay. Which has got a nice confluence on the 382 and the 618 to move. I also then want to be looking at is, are there any sort of order blocks? So we've filled everything up to here. There is a potential block up to the 786 level, which also lines up with this the two. Let's check it like this. 236. Okay. It's 12 hour. That's all done and dusted. Okay, so got a potential area up here. Again, this is not me looking at it deep to confirm that these are 100% order blocks or not. It's just having a quick scan. So and for this we are going to be, yeah, that would still be fine. Okay. Field. Okay, so ideally what I'll be looking for is, as it hasn't really tested that golden pocket or 382 area, and we are currently sitting slowly between each 0.5 level, we have filled these blocks up. Well, we do need to fill these blocks up and then move up. So what I would be looking at potentially is move to at least this 382 level. Would be a good area for a potential long position, simply because you have a confluence between that 618 as also. So you've got the confluence there between the 382 and the 618. Another area of interest for me would be this area down here. Actually, I marked them with these green points. So one of the things you're looking at is, price comes down, pushes up, potentially tests a local area block, comes back down, retests this here for more liquidity, here again, and again it's rejected on that local 382 and the 618, and then moved back down again, trying to grab liquidity here. And that would be like a tested order block, this green candle over here. So it all depends on if it's just here or not. There is the potential where price can move up as such, so effectively fill this block, go something like this, move up, and then come back down as a retest. There is that possibility, or it could, instead of reaching that top, come back down. And we need more confluences potentially to see where it's going. Now, based on the daily, it's tried, but it all depends on what the next daily holds. If I now look at it from a indicator point of view as well, so if I look at, say, the Titans and the Titan stock, it is still pointing down. We've got more bearish volume than bullish volume, and so effectively what I'd naturally presume it can come down to test these areas. If I check on the weekly basis, Titan stock is moving down, but we are still bullish. So as long as the bullish volume holds above the bearish volume long term, I'll still be happy in that sense. But until then, every time, what you really want to be doing is, as long as this is bullish, and then on the daily itself, every time the volume's about to turn bullish again, is to then obviously take that long position up, and that's based on a lucky strategy. If you actually look at it from that point of view, we have bullish volume here, and if we compare that to, say, let's move this here, so to the weekly, you can see we still have that bullish volume, and then you would have caught that pump nicely. If you go back to the daily, the other thing to look at is other areas where there was more confirmed bullish volume, so you could have even taken a little long here, which would have been risky, but it still wouldn't have been bad, because your stop would have been naturally placed over here. So in this case, the next sort of cross up we had was effectively around here, which would have gotten you a nice long position at the very lows back in July. So if you compare that to the weekly, again, on the weekly it was just starting to get close to ready to turn. So you can see that by the RG at the bottom. So if you did wait slightly longer and we go back to the daily, you still would have caught a nice move up. So based on that, as soon as this flicks back up, we're good. I would potentially see this as just a natural pull down as we got over here, and if it holds, then we can see a nice move up. The other important thing you would want to look at is the market structure overall, because if we lose this and come back down here, and we close below this area, you break that market structure, which is a bullish structure, and that's not something you want. So, and what I mean by that, effectively, if price is doing this, if it comes down over here and then moves up, great. If it fails, then and it breaks below here, we've broken this structure, and then expect a potential retrace, well, a smaller move to the upside, and then potentially another move down. So that would be key to hold that area. So for me, if I was going to long, I would ideally want to make sure that it's on the bounce and on the held of this. So if we get a test on this 618 and 382 area, that would be a nice long position. But then at the same time, you may want to think about putting a natural stop maybe on a previous low around here. That's just my opinion on Phantom. Okay, moving over to Engine Coin. So again, it has moved up nicely. What I'm looking for here, let's hide the indicators from that high to that low. So we broke above 618, tested 786, currently holding above the golden pocket. Okay, let's take the local move. So the local move up to 0.2 and currently just below the 618. Okay, and now let's look at the trend based fib. This low to the high to the low. Okay. I would be hesitant along this right now, simply because it's touched this 1618 and that would be one of my targets. I would expect price to potentially move sideways here, so some kind of distribution possibly, and then a small pullback, again trying not to go below this market structure. If it does that, then that would be a nice new long position. And how would I sort of calculate that? You're looking at from this low to that high, and ideally you don't want it to go below this 0.5. Naturally I would want to get here, but if we do bounce here, I would only want there to be a wick and then the candle close above, and that would still hold the structure. If we get a close below this or on this area, it would not be good, because I would consider that structure potentially broken. The other thing you also want to look at is from an order block point of view. So you have well, that's all done and dusted. So effectively the advantage that you'll have over here is price. It would naturally, you expect it to come down, retest the block and move up, so which effectively becomes like a breaker block. So that would be a nice area here. If we don't hold, then you have a bullish block over here. So that's another area I'd be looking at, and that is if price move down here, then I'd expect a potential wick to either 786 to 886 to cover this liquidity here. So that's what I would be looking at in terms of a channel. I know I didn't go over the channel for Phantom. It was just if I go over it, you can kind of guess it's a bullish channel. But for Engine Coin, I can draw a channel just to see how it is. It still, looks like a nice bullish channel overall. So let's go to say the weekly. And we can choose the parallel channels. We can choose from here. That could be one way. The other way is obviously picking this low over here, this high, then switch that to the daily and then candlesticks. So you can see that's nice little swing failure patterns, but moving in that direction. So ideally you want to hold this channel long term, but if we do want to test or make a potential all-time high, a new all-time high, like I said, I would not want to lose that structure. So potentially something like as per before, something like this. And if we do get something like this where the close is above here, then you know you have the potential to go higher and even test this sort of area. And then what you'd be looking at here is you take this and you do a negative fib to potentially maybe test it, you know, 382 to even potentially 236 with a wick up around here. That would be obviously at this area. You'd naturally start to get a bit of resistance because it was testing the previous all-time high to potentially moving up. So that's one thing I'd be looking at. Okay, moving on to DOT. Actually, before I go to DOT, let's load up the indicators. So from an indicator point of view, on the daily, you can see it's been bullish for a while, since the 15th. If we look at it from the weekly perspective, you can see it's still in its bullish run. You know, price did come down and then it did not cross, so we're still in that bullish mode. So looking at it from that sort of point of view, if this price doesn't come down and cross over, then I would expect another push up. But if we do come down to this sort of area, then I can see this potentially come down a bit like this and then sort of move up, and then what you'll get is what you'd be looking for potentially is a move up, something like that, and you'd want to long around sort of this sort of area. Again, this is all a guesstimate because I can't tell you based on time, but that's what I'd be looking for, something along those lines. Let's move over to DOT. A similar thing with DOT. DOT is has made a new all-time high, so for that I'd be looking for more of a target where it could potentially go. Ideally, I don't really want to enter quite randomly in this, so let's first of all let's do this low to the high. So what I'm looking for here is where DOT could potentially target, and my original target again would be around 618 sort of level. What I'd also look at is remove the fib retracement. If I take this high here to that low and then do a expansion, so in this sort of case you can see it lines up very well with a 2.236, so that would be a nice sort of target. Then we can look at the trend based fib, and what we want to do from this is look at from, let's slow high, look at from here actually. So if I take this low, you can see we're getting closer to the 0.1. If I take this low over here, still not too far, and you know, depending where you choose, you can see it's still reaction in the golden pocket. So based on that, if we break this and break the resistance that we, you know, natural resistance where we may get from the normal fibs, then the target will be this 1.127, and it is possible you could get a wick to that level and then price closes down to, you know, the 0.236 in this case with this fib, or in that case 618. So effectively doing something along the lines of price moves up, boom 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 here, maybe holds, retests, moves up, fills, and then comes back down and then tests around this sort of area. That's entirely possible, but again, we are in, you know, price discovery, and this is just my estimate. Now, looking at it from the indicator point of view, as mentioned, you know, this is going nicely bullish up, so I don't expect it to turn around anytime soon. 12 hours is alright, 4 hours, you know, it's just starting again. it's just starting to reset. 1 hour, again, it's still moving upwards. So, and I wouldn't even bother with the lower time frames if I'm looking for a high time frame sort of setup. So going back from DOT to Algo now. So you can see with Algo we have been in a sideways. So effectively you could say here potentially distributing and then potentially gathering up momentum, but for that let's look at the weekly first. So in this case, again, we want to look at the Fibs. One of the reasons I switched to the weekly rather than using the daily, because there's more noise in this case. So I mean, you can see this could be distribution or it could be an area of accumulation. It all depends on what type of the cycle we're in and how much we've moved up. I'm not going to go over detail on that. That's not part of this sort of stream. So let's look at Fibs first of all. So from this low to that high, so you can see we're up at 382, which is nice. The daily, you can see we've got resistance on the 236, but potentially if we hold the 382 and we are able to break this, then we can attempt for a reattempt for the all-time highs ideally. Otherwise, you've got an easy retracement down to test this area here, and you could grab some liquidity here, because this is potentially a block on a lower time frame as well. So you got on the 12-hour, 4-hour potentially. So there is quite a bit of liquidity here as well, and then obviously we have liquidity built up on here. So what would be nice from this point of view, because we are technically still trying to hold this structure. So if I move back onto the daily, so you can see we're trying to not break down. If we do, it could be like a wick down, grab that liquidity and then come back up. If we do range over here, then obviously the local targets that I would have is going to be based against also order blocks again. So from here you have a nice order block sitting over here locally. I'd expect price to potentially retest around here. Don't see any sort of major blocks around here. This has already been filled. This has already been filled. This has already been filled. So nothing in that area, just this one. So that would be the bullish side, which is effectively a bearish block, and then you have your bullish order block will be on that 618 area. So that's what ideally you want. If you look at it from a channel point of view, if I go in the weekly, the channel still looks nice and bullish. So what we're looking at is let's say this point over here to this point and something like that. That's a potential channel you can use on the weekly. And the daily you've got something like this, and what it looks like, it's also using that middle of the channel as an area of potential support. So if it does stay like this, it is good, but locally it made a little higher high than this, but you do now want to ideally see it break that 236, and if it then does reattempt to for the previous all-time high to break, it would be nice. If we then go and check sort of the indicators, from the daily point of view, it's still a bit bullish. So it could, if it is able to break through this 236, that would be perfect. On the weekly point of view, it's again very tight, so we just don't want that we don't want it to lose that momentum here. If it breaks below the red line, which is the sell volume, potentially it can move sideways longer, or even a pull down and test this 618. You know, something along these lines where you can see volume broke down and you had more sell volume, and it just went sideways and just held on by the lower part of the channel until we were able to break back up. So that is entirely possible, but we do need to hold that. Okay, moving over to Atom next. So Atom looks very similar to the previous alts. So on the weekly chart, let's go back to daily first. So it looks very similar to Algo. So what we want to do, let's go back to the weekly. This low to the high. See a nice bounce on the 3-year 2, holding the 236. Let's check. Let's put this. Trying to make it very clean. Okay, so we have a potential block here, and I look at this based on this red candle, and if I switch to the daily, I assume there will be a good few blocks over here. So this is potentially filled, but then you have this particular red candle over here. Now I'm not saying price is going to come back down here. Looking at it from long term, what we can see is a nice bullish channel. There you go. Probably something along this line to up here. We can clean that up if we go to the weekly. So we will pick these two if I use the weekly. And then we can switch back to the daily. Then candles. So you can see that is very nice. So we're holding the middle of the channel. I mean, if you look at it from a structural point of view, ideally, yes, you had a higher high, a lower high, a lower high, but another lower high, but you had a higher low in this case each time. So it's not full change in market structure in that sense. Then we broke down, and then we're back up again, and we're effectively at a point where we are almost very close to the previous, well, the first initial lower high, but we have tested the middle of the channel. If we can break above this, ideally break this level over here, it would be very nice to, break the all-time high again. So looking at it from that point of view, and using the fib levels, the ideal natural target is going to be this 1.127, but the long-term target you ideally want around this 1618, where you also have a nice confluence with the 236. So if we do go sideways and still carry on moving up, that would be the ideal target. If it does come down to touch any of these blocks, then you're looking at obviously a retracement down to potentially this 618 level. That's the both sort of scenarios I would look at. Moving over from Atom, before I actually move on, let's look at the indicators. So again, on the daily, like I said, it's important we don't break down. From the weekly, it looks still positive, but again, the ideal thing we really need is for this to turn up, which in fact, if it does this, then this momentum, you expect a little shift like that, and that would be fine, and that would continue up. If we break this and we lose this below the cells, effectively we can then see a longer sideway period or a potential retrace down to that 618 area, and that's it for Atom. So moving on to Flow. So let's look at this. Let's go back from the weekly to the daily. In this particular chart, we don't have too much data. Looking at this as a market structure, it's not too great. It is moving down. It is a bearish structure, effectively. Not doing this perfect, but if I am to use the points, if I use this particular point to this point over here, and not using this, just to see what the type of confluence we get. So you see how nice that wick is. So yeah, ideally we need to break up, and doesn't really look good, in terms of long term. Yes, this is bullish, but this move up, and if we don't break above this, which I hope it does, if we go to the weekly, this needs to break above this. There is no ifs or buts. And if we look at it from a fib level point, say from this high to that low, it's either rejected, it's not holding this. If I use this point over here, again you can see it's just sitting under 236. So we really need to break above this and hold this 236, or break above this 382. Otherwise, if we don't, there is that potential that it will carry on moving down. And if it does carry on moving down, then I would measure it more locally. So as such, that if I was looking for a long target in this case, originally I would have done this, and you can see you had a rejection, and we come down and we started to potentially move out, and then we retested the 618, and then it's currently sitting on the 236. So we really need to break this area to change that trend. So for a long-term spot position, I wouldn't buy this right now, but that's just me, in my opinion. Moving over to Wi-Fi. Oh, I can't even pronounce it. Wi-Fi. Alright, so looking at Wi-Fi, let's look at the weekly. So you can see from the weekly point of view, the structure has started to become a bit bearish, but from over here, the lows are starting to become higher lows again. So effectively, consolidating. From an indicator point of view, you can also see there is no sort of clear direction. We've crossed over up and down multiple times, so it's a little bit bullish on the weekly point. Daily point again, is very tight, but again, it's like that consolidation period. So personally, if I was looking to long this, taking this from this high to the low, we have struggled to break above this 236 area and stay above it. So that would be something of concern. If I remove this, the other thing you want to look at maybe is the local fib area. So taking from this high to this low, and you can see you rejected again. And we're locally we're at the 382. So ideally you want to see a break of that 618. If we look at it from an alternative target, so say a trend-based fib, say this low, I'm not going to pick this wick on purpose, to here, you can see we rejected again under 618. So we do really need to break that. It is still good that we're above the local 382, but yeah, I wouldn't want to start thinking about longing this until we break this, to give me some more confidence, because otherwise it has the potential to have more downwards movement, or even just moving sideways. So I wouldn't want to get into this coin on a swing point of view. If you are trading this from a scalping point, yes, brilliant, you know, you've got a nice beautiful range from a scalp point, but from a swing point, no, I wouldn't. Is there anything else that I can see from now? Let's go to EOS. So EOS is, again, if you look at it, is ranging, you can say, with, you know, we made lower highs, and the lower lows starting to become lower highs, but nothing to suggest it's breaking out or anything. If I look for a local fib level, yeah, let's switch back to the daily. Now we struggle to break. We struggled to break the 0.5. We even, you know, we then came back up and we're trying to break the 382. So 382 ends up becoming a big resistance locally. So not looking too great for like a swing position for the moment, for a while, or a good few months. So personally, I'd be looking more for, if I was trading this, maybe scalping, but otherwise no. And if you look at it from a long-term point of view, if you move to this, and we remove that, you know, we're struggling to break above the 236. And if you're wondering what is here, this is probably the 0.133. Look at the standard, it's on the standard template. Too many standard templates. There you go, it's stuck on the 0.1. It's 0.133. So kind of lose that, it will kind of get a bit scary where it potentially could retest the lows again. So yeah, I wouldn't want to hold this long term. Okay, next thing you got is Litecoin. Litecoin again looks like it's ranging, but you know, the lower highs are getting nicer. We still need to make higher highs. So actually, one thing I forgot to do on EOS. Let's look at the indicators. It's locally little bullish move on the daily. Weekly, as you can see, is bearish. So not too great for me if I'm looking at it from that point of view. Okay, back to our Litecoin. So on daily sort of side, you know, there is a nice channel, and you know, we have tested the middle part, and this is the middle line is acting as a bit of resistance. So naturally you'd want to long from the lower part of the channel. But if we take this high, Again, on purpose, I'm not taking this wick. You can see it tested nicely, broke through. So we've broken out the local 618, which is good. If we're able to hold this area and not come down, say tomorrow, then it has the potential to move up further and potentially break this 786 area. And if it does do that, you know, we can potentially retest the all-time high again. So let's look at the 4 hour. So you have a nice block over here which can be retested. All the blocks around here are filled. You've got local bearish block, bullish blocks down here. So if we don't hold, you're looking at potentially a retest of these areas. And what I would say on that, if it does ever come down around here, this is if that's the local high, what you have is some nice confluence with that 618 and that order block, and this 886 area. So this would be my first target if it failed to break up. If it does manage to break up, then obviously what I would then do using this is I would hide this fib and make a new fib from this low. So that high to this low. Let's go onto the daily. That high, this low. And my target at this point will be natural again to 1.127 or potentially 1618. 1618 would be a nice break to the all-time high. So we need to break above this key area. So yeah, so Litecoin looks good in that regards. If you look at it from indicator point of view, you've got nice bullish volume coming in, bearish is dropping off. On the weekly side, it's showing here that the bullish side is just slightly moved up overall. However, it was ranging sideways, but technically overall the price was moving up. So lower down on the lower side of the channels, it was looking good. So yeah, so these would be my targets for Litecoin. Okay, Matic. So for Matic, what I'm looking at is quite bullish on the daily. Let's look at the weekly. If I build a weekly channel on here, it looks very, very nice. Daily, break above, come back in, test the middle, come back in. That looks pretty good. If we take from the all-time high down to the low, that looks very positive as well for Matic. Tested different levels, broke through, come back, held. Okay, that's really nice. So if we can stay above the 618 and are able to break the 786 level, it looks very nice to potentially retest the all-time high. And you're looking at around 886 level to even a test of the 0.1. And if we do, if we are able to break that, again, my natural targets are going to be 1.127 to 1618. I would look at maybe the trend-based fib at this point. So this low, that high, this low, just to see how we're doing. Hide the normal fib. You can see that smash through that. There's that resistance. So we smash through this, come back and retest it. Yeah, it looks very nice. Looks very good. And then if we look at it from the normal fib retracement point of view, 1618 at the top, and again that is breaks the all-time high, the previous one. So natural targets, like I said, mentioned, would be this test here. We're using this if we are using this fib for the range, but when we start looking at targets outside of the trend, trend-based fib, and then I'd be looking at effectively 1618 areas or 1.127 outside, and that's where I'd use the trend-based fib when we start looking at price discovery. So those will be my natural targets. Let's look at the indicator side of things. That looks very positive. This looks like it's going to just flick back up again. We didn't have any sort of divergences or anything like that in this case. Weekly, weekly looks really good. On the weekly side we have flicked over back into bullish volume. So, and if you then go back on the daily, that is beautiful. So even if we get a small retracement down and a retest of the 618, and we hold this sort of area, that would be good, and then bounce back up. But if we break this, then obviously I'd expect price to come lower down, and at that point the lower down areas I'll be looking at, if again we have to plan for all scenarios. Again, naturally I'd go for the 618, but here you have an order block on the 0.5 level and potentially at the 618, and so I'd look at that. So you naturally have some nice order blocks lower down, but you don't want price to come down here, because then the other problem you have is you see this market structure over here where it bounced, where we held it. You would lose that. So ideally you want that bullish structure to be maintained. So as it's done this, we came down, we did not break that structure, and then we're trying again. And if this is able to move up around here or even higher up, that would be something that would be nice. Something like that to even up here, and that is again retesting the high. So again, it depends on how fast we move and which direction we go over a period of time. So I like this, and that's basically it. That's all I have. Sorry for the long videos and the detail I tried to go through. It's just simply I get a lot of requests. I'm in it to want to make money, want to teach, and my goal is for everyone to be successful. And that's why my videos are long. But in the future I will try to make them a bit shorter, because I know it may get boring, and I don't like putting music in. But anyway, regardless of that, thank you for tuning in. Please try to, if you can, support the channel. It would be great. Use the links below the video in the description. Understand that it's the same Bybit offer that I get as everybody else. So helping me out means I'm trying my best to put as much content as I can. And I'm happy to take any comments as well. How to improve. I'm not a YouTube guru or anything, and and I edit my own videos. So thank you again for your time. Subscribe and support the channel, and hopefully maybe if you want to join our Discord, use that link as well. Thank you again. Take care and bye bye.